The Washington Post has obtained what it refers to as an explosive whistleblower complaint in which the site's former security chief alleges Twitter executives deceived federal regulators and the company's own board of directors about, quote, extreme, egregious deficiencies in its defenses against hackers, as well as its meager efforts to fight spam.
Of course, the news could have massive implications for the Musk-Twitter legal battle, as the Tesla CEO alleges the site has been undercounting the number of spam and bots on its platform. So this is fascinating. The Twitter, after some high-profile hacks of the Twitter CEO, then CEO's own Twitter account, Barack Obama's own Twitter account, hired this guy who was known on the internet to be an expert hacker to review its own security protocols. And now he, apparently, after working at Twitter for a number of years, is whistleblowing about the extent to which Twitter has not closed the gaps that he was ostensibly hired to identify for them to close. What do you make of this?
So, look, I want to urge a little bit of caution, though, with this, because I remember that last year, around this time last year, remember the Facebook whistleblower who came forward with supposedly damning information about what Meta has done. And it turned out that was significantly, in my view, overblown and was kind of a self-aggrandizing thing. She was put on this pedestal by the media, by traditional media, who hate social media companies. The Washington Post, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, they all have this aggressive anti-social media agenda. They hate and fear their competitors, et cetera. So they want to celebrate, give sainthood to this woman. So that's my baseline. So I have that in the back of my mind as I'm reading what, again, the Washington Post describes as an explosive whistleblower complaint. So now, it could be explosive. It could be that everything he says is accurate and Twitter is unbelievably lax with its security and is not doing nearly enough. I don't trust the Washington Post framing of this, to be frank.
What aspect
of it?
So
I don't, without looking at it more, without reading the complaint myself, without seeing how other people react to it. We're not at the stage where I can make any kind of judgment about it. But just because the Washington Post is telling me it's explosive doesn't mean I necessarily believe it.
Well, the Facebook whistleblower concerns, remind me, wasn't that about the...
That was about Instagram's harm to children.
Right. This seems to me to be a less political subject matter. We know that Twitter has lacked security because we all saw the hacks that occurred. And regardless of your politics, it would seem to me obvious that everyone has an investment in their accounts not being commandeered, private information potentially accessed and shared from DMs and unsent messages and things like that. And you know, I'm not quite sure how this could be politicized from one way or the other, except for that it's a basic kind of a consumer rights issue.
Well, okay, but that is a political issue, right? The federal government wants to exercise more direction and more control over social media in terms of content. Well, I mean, that's something that...
Isn't this content neutral? Isn't this about whether or not Twitter and your personal accounts could be hacked, as opposed to these kind of speech and censorship regulations that were the
This
nature
issue is
of the
content
Facebook?
neutral on its face, but supposedly content neutral decisions are, in my view, a way for the government to justify taking a greater hold over what will ultimately be, when done by the actual bureaucrats themselves or the political figures, content-based decisions. I'm just saying that that's my background as I approach this. I'm not actually disputing, we don't have enough information based on just reading the story, what the underlying, so he's saying that, this security expert is saying that yes, they brought him on to fix the security, and he says that Twitter told the Federal Trade Commission that they had a solid security plan, and he is saying that they lied to the FTC because they do not have a solid security plan. Although that could, but you see how that could also be a subjective matter. Like, they think their plan is solid. He thinks it's not.
Well, sure.
The FTC might pick a third thing.
We'll find out. But, you know, it's also possible that this guy who was literally hired for this very purpose and who has really understood, I think part of what makes this story interesting to people who are in the community, in the tech, I don't know, internet privacy community, is that this guy, Zatko, is known as being kind of like preternaturally, superior in knowledge and ability, kind of like a genius in the field and assessing these kinds of things. That's why he was tapped to lead this project to begin with. And one would expect that he was pretty handsomely compensated for coming in-house and doing work like this. And so the idea that he would kind of risk that arrangement and become a whistleblower in this context does
Twitter's
seem
position
notable.
is that he was fired after 15 months for poor performance and leadership. So their position is he didn't do a good job and they fired him, and he's a spurned former employee.
Yeah, and that's the story of many an employee that has argued that they've been retaliated against since time immemorial. We just had this Starbucks case where the court found that they were not allowed to have just fired all these managers that were trying to unionize their business. I mean, this is a little bit of a tale as old as time, and you're right. Time will tell how this actually pans out.
Some ex-employees are spurned ex-employees. They're not always the company was unfair.
Yeah, and some people are inclined to believe the corporation, and some people are
not.
I'm not inclined to believe anybody, but
It's not that I'm inclined to believe the corporation. I'm not inclined to believe the mainstream media's framing of tech issues because they are alarmist and panic-driven from the traditional gatekeepers of information who don't like that social media is beating them at their game.
Zatko, a fringe hacker known as Mudge, until brought inside and hired to work for this institution, I think doesn't exactly fit into this neat little box of this is a mainstream media figure. Even the Facebook hacker, a whistleblower rather, Facebook is an institution that has been hiring neoliberal elites from Harvard, where it was founded, since the beginning of its tenure. It's all filled with people who are very much establishment actors. This guy was hired off the dark web or whatever its equivalent was. I'm sorry to the community that I don't know the terminology for these kinds of things, to come in-house. And I think that is precisely what makes it so fascinating, is that it's someone who perhaps has the independence because they have been kind of professionally independent their whole life and operating as an outsider, who's chosen to blow the whistle in a way that the company probably never expected it to do, because it was, I'm sure he was, only was able to be attracted and hired because he was handsomely paid and supported. So we'll see what comes out of this.
Well, and we'll see if it has an impact on the Twitter v. Musk legal battle. That will be interesting. So obviously these claims are that Twitter is not, so the former hacker turned inside Twitter security, Mudge, that's what we're calling him. Mudge says that they are not incentivized to take action against spam, contrary to what Twitter's CEO has said. And that is a significant aspect of Musk's dispute with Twitter, because from his standpoint, what he said is he pulled out of the deal in part because there's much more false, fake spam bot accounts on the platform, he suspects, than Twitter claims there are. I forget what the percentage Twitter said it was. He thinks it's more than that. And according to Musk, Twitter was not willing to do the kind of due diligence to demonstrate that it was correct, and then it gets into a very technical legal battle. So this could be this could be, if these claims are borne out by Mudge, Zatko, it would help theoretically Musk's argument.
And specifically, he says that the company incentivized growth and the adding more users to the account, and that's why it didn't actually incentivize getting rid of spam, because new spam accounts, new bot accounts represents growth to the company, and that was their primary business model. Obviously, Elon Musk's is different, as we've discussed on the show.
Right.
He wanted to move toward a kind of paid subscriber basis for Twitter, which relies on real people with real credit card information to put in and actually pay fees to the company. So we'll continue to follow this story.
Absolutely.
And we'll have more Rising for you after this.